Let me get the URL for you so you can put it on your page too.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Do you see the stream and everything normal?
I see the screen. I see a Section 31
Oh,
logo.
that's me. That's my business. So that's a side note. I was just signed into the wrong account. But we probably don't want to fuck with it. But I sent you the URL to the live stream video. So if it'll fuck you up where you're in, then we probably don't want to mess with it. But.
I'm gonna send it. I want to actually post it on the page because it's in the messenger.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
Hold on a second. Maybe I can copy it. Hold on. Can I minimize this video?
I believe you can. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. Hopefully, I'm copying this. Give it a shot. All right. Hold on 1 second.
It's all good. Just give it a minute or two. It's kind of a little goofier on the phone for me, anyway. I always prefer having the full desktop.
Yeah. Well, I haven't used this Google thing in a while now.
It's because Facebook won't let me do it at the same time. Like I have the software that I have both of us on the screen, OBS, and then the other software that comes with it. Like can't use the same like webcam and two streams and stuff like that. So it like doesn't let me make the call on Facebook. Right. But did you get the link posted to Direct Democracy?
Yeah, I'm going to do it right now.
Okay. Did they let you edit these at the end and like cut off the beginning?
Sorry, say that again, Doug?
I said with these live stream videos, do they let you cut off the beginning of it after it's done?
Like you mean edit it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I have. I edit Facebook videos all the time.
Okay, great.
So.
No, just confirming because I've never done a live stream before, so yeah. Okay, so let me know when the link's posted to the. Oh, I see it that you just posted it. And so now the only thing I don't see on the Hangouts right now is video from you. It might have gone away when you.
Yeah, that's because I'm on the Facebook page. But hold on 1 second. I'm gonna
yeah, no problem.
Here. And you should be able to see me now. You see me now?
Yeah, you just popped in. Yeah. Okay, so if you're ready,
all right.
If you're ready, I'm ready. I'll control it so that when you're talking, I have you in the corner next to me. So if we're both talking, I'll leave it like that. Then if you're mainly talking, I'll have you centered on the screen. Even though you can't see me, you'll see the live stream. So anyway. Hey everybody, this is Doug from Separation of Corporation State. We were doing this live stream in reverse today because Nick was going to interview me from Direct Democracy, but to get the video going rather than just audio, it was just quicker for me to do the stream. But next time I'll show him how to do that and it'll be good. But anyway, I'll let you take it from here, Nick.
Well, the whole purpose of this interview really was because we wanted to talk about the net neutrality. Amongst other things, and we're going to spend about a half an hour doing it.
Okay.
And I don't know. I mean, like Doug, I know you've done a video on this. You did a fantastic job on the net neutrality video, and now that it's come to pass, now it seems like this Trump administration really is really sending downhill really fast. I mean, it wasn't any better with Obama.
Yeah. Well,
it's like he's on hyperdrive.
Well, yeah. Let me make it a little clearer as far as like what happened in 2015 versus with Obama and his FCC versus what's happening now. Okay. So,
Yep.
So net neutrality was technically not in place as far as how it's defined in the media since 2015, right? So, in 2015, the FCC made a decision to classify internet service providers as Title II of the Communications Act of 1934. And so Title II is not just about treating traffic neutrally. It's 100 pages of various regulations regarding traffic. And it was written in 1934 to deal with the AT&T monopoly. So that was the reason why it was originally written the way that it was because AT&T had a massive monopoly of the telephone system, and they basically passed these provisions, Title I, Title II, Title III, to deal with that type of monopoly, and it also covers like radio and TV and all that. So what FCC did in 2015 was they said that internet service providers count under those regulations of Title II. That's all they did. They didn't. There wasn't a law. Congress didn't pass a law. It was just the FCC that passed a rule saying that it is Title II. So all that this does, that they're overturning, the Ajit Pai guy is the current FCC chair, and he was on the council or whatever it is, commission 2 years ago, but he was in the minority. So now that it's Trump and Republicans, he's now in the slight majority. And so these aren't, what I'm saying is like, these are FCC recommendations. So they're not actually like set in law yet. I would worry more about the prospect of net neutrality if it was a congressional law that came through that said that that companies are allowed to block or something like that. So what I'm saying, I guess long story short, is I do support net neutrality, but I don't necessarily think Title II actually enforces net neutrality, because if you look at Title II, and and we'll post it in the description of this video, but Title II is 100 pages long, and it pertains to a lot of stuff other than it does pertain to treating all traffic neutrally, but it also pertains to a lot of other stuff too, like cooperation with law enforcement, the rates they're allowed to charge for the specific service, stuff like that. So it gets really specific. And so what I'm saying is that simply saying it's not Title II now doesn't necessarily make the internet, it doesn't necessarily kill net neutrality, but the root of the problem, as far as why net neutrality would even be a threat, like the idea that it would go away as a threat in the first place, is because in the United States most people only have one choice of internet service provider. So a lot of them, so a lot of like Americans believe in like the free market approach, like, oh well, if they did that, then you could just get a different internet service provider. Well, in my area, my only choice is Comcast. So whatever the hell Comcast decides to do, I just have to take it in the ass. And so and I can't go, oh, I'll get CenturyLink, or oh, I'll get municipal broadband, because it's not available as a choice, like realistically. So what I'm saying is that the market competition mindset won't actually work in this case, because we have such a limited choice of internet service provider. But putting it under Title II is actually, to me, seems like it would be harder to implement net neutrality, because instead of it being in the hands of these companies doing it, it would be in the hands of the government doing it. And I'm not anti-government as a concept, but I do think that the United States government would also use it to violate those principles as well. And that's kind of my view on it. But I am in favor of nothing getting blocked. That and what I'm saying is you got to wonder why there's a lot of big companies that are for net neutrality. That like a lot of people think that they're just nicer or more progressive companies, but that's not the case. It's really that, like, for example, Netflix and I don't like any side of the factions here. These companies are just factions of companies. So, for example, you have the government as a faction trying to control more of what the internet does. You have the companies that run the lines to everybody else, like the internet service providers. They're trying to control it. And then you have these new companies that have made a lot of money based on the amount of bandwidth they can have without paying for it, like Amazon and Netflix and YouTube, and all these companies would have to pay more if they didn't have net neutrality. So that's why they're for it. Because they'll make more money with that, but they're not necessarily like benevolent or whatever. I guess that's all I'm saying. And so, what else did you want to know?
Well, I've been hearing stories about throttling and how different service providers under this new law could throttle what you watch or what you see.
Yeah,
it's basically they might own a certain. I heard this as an example.
Yeah, it's an example of what could happen. It's kind of like it hasn't gone full steroid in that direction yet, but we're talking about possibilities of they could do this. And Comcast has done it. Comcast has said, well, we don't like BitTorrent on our network, so we're going to throttle that. And that got them in trouble with the FCC. They had to overturn that. So. Like what I'm saying is that the companies have been trying, they've gotten stopped, but there's no actual specific law saying they have to be neutral. It's really like Congress hasn't passed a simple law, so FCC keeps going back and forth over whether to classify it under Title II of a 1934 law or to not classify it at all. And so they're going back to how it was in 2015, which is where they're not classifying it at all. But up until that point, it was mostly neutral because companies just never did do that. But now they started doing it, and so that's why you got a reaction to that. And now you're going to get a reaction to this, and so. But all I'm saying is all it's doing right now at the present moment, it could go a lot further in the wrong direction. But it's just right now going back to what it was like in 2015. So I expect what you'd start to see after it gets full implemented. And this is not actually passing a law, it's repealing a enforcement of a law under a certain provision. So it's saying that it's not Title II.
So how does it affect the internet? So
Well,
how was the internet back in 2015?
Well, the internet in 2015, I mean, it hasn't changed much since 2015, but what it was that it's basically just that companies were allowed to throttle or charge different prices for different content. So, for example, if they said people using Netflix on our network is using up 30% of our, bandwidth, they can go to Netflix and say you have to pay us to make your shit run fast for everybody. And they are technically allowed to do that. They haven't done it much, but they could do that in 2015, and they kind of did, but they didn't do it en masse. It was only like a couple things here and a couple things there. But what I'm saying is the fact that they repeal this gives them the ability to do so again, and they probably will try again, and you might end up with a court case disputing that. And so what I'm saying is like it's not much different than it was in 2015. It's just that they've repealed laws around regulation of internet traffic, or not repealed the law, but said it's not under this category anymore. It's really kind of it's milquetoast either way. That's all I'm saying. And so, like if this was like a real good law or something, you would actually have a very simple 1 or 2 page law that says, like, you're not allowed to throttle traffic for end users or make it run slower because the site they're going to is popular. You can make a simple law that does that. But I'm saying that when people are claiming we need net neutrality, put it back under Title II, that doesn't necessarily enforce net neutrality. That's all I'm saying is that, but it's presented as a prescription that it will. Because like here's the thing: there's people that want to in the government that want to have the government control the internet, and that's kind of what I feel like Title II would allow the government to do. But then you also have these companies and so Trump, Trump doesn't care about net neutrality or that users have better internet. They're just on the side of the companies can just do whatever they want and
but is that a good thing though, Doug?
That's what?
Well, is that a good thing that you let companies do what they want?
No. The problem in the U.S. though is that it's like it's because we talked about direct democracy versus representative government, and so the U.S. government right now is corrupt to the core, like pretty damn corrupt. So whatever it controls might end up being a bad thing. So it's like so that's where like a lot of Americans have crossed wires when it comes to the government doing things, is because a lot of Americans, like, we know our government's corrupt, but if you were to give them control, then
they just don't trust their government. They just don't trust their government.
Yeah, they don't trust it, and so it could be good, it could not be good, and you just don't know. But for sure, we're not controlling it, so we're at the mercy of whoever's in power at the time. That's kind of like, so it's kind of like a situation where no matter what side of this debate you're on, it's shitty either way. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like to me. So you're either going to have corrupt governments controlling it, or you're going to have corrupt companies controlling it. And really, I think the solution to the problem, though, is you have to make sure that there's lots of choices of internet service provider. Yeah, you have public municipal broadband as a competitor. There's many cities that have done this in the United States, but and some states it's illegal. Like, they actually make it so cities can't do it to compete with these private ISPs. But for example, Chattanooga, Tennessee did it, and what ended up happening was they started offering really fast, like 1 gig service for really cheap. And what ended up happening was a lot of tech companies and stuff started setting up their servers there because they were able to get access to the fast internet pipe for a lower cost. And then of course it brings the prices down for Comcast and stuff too, because they have to compete with that now. And if it's owned, publicly owned, and it's a competitor, then that would prevent things like net neutrality abuses or throttling from even happening. And that to me is the root of the problem. You can put a law in saying you're not allowed to throttle. That's fine. But the reason why they have the incentive to throttle in the first place is because you only have one choice, so they can do whatever they want, and you just have to take it.
Well, let me ask you a question. Doug. Now, who supplies the infrastructure? Now, who puts the infrastructure in place for the internet? Let's just say.
Well, various companies. Sometimes they put in their own infrastructure. Sometimes it's public. It's a mix. But typically in one area there's only one internet service provider. So, for example, like in my area, it's Comcast. So there's not another internet company that's physically built wires up to the house. So only Comcast has done that. So my only choice is Comcast. So, but what I'm saying is what they do in other countries.
That's not really free market, Doug. That's not really free market.
No, I know. But people make the argument that just because you have different companies competing on whether they do net neutrality or not, that's somehow a free market. I'm saying the only reason why this is a threat is because there's no choice of internet service provider. It's like if the only store was Walmart. So if Walmart does something
actually it is the only store.
Yeah. So right. So if it's like, and so if you don't like Walmart, too bad. You have to go there. And that's kind of what it's like. So, but what I'm saying is what they do in other countries to actually allow more ISPs is they'll make a law saying that all ISPs have to rent out their lines to other ISPs. So you can have technically 20 ISPs, even though Comcast is the only ISP that has direct wires that they've wired up to my house. They would have to rent that out to another ISP, and the other ISP would have to do the same. So
you see, that's the problem with infrastructure. When you let the private companies install their own private infrastructure, right. Now they have a monopoly over it. Now, what they should do is the government should pay for it, and they should sub it out to a company, obviously, to bring in the internet lines.
Yeah,
and then rent out, like you were saying, rent out the infrastructure to companies, and basically it's going to come down to who's got the best service. I mean, here in Canada, we have smaller companies that are doing a hell of a lot better than the actual big conglomerates.
Yeah, definitely.
They're providing a better service, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a free market. Now a smaller company is, there's a lot of smaller companies that want to remain small. They're not out there to monopolize. They just want to provide a service. They want to do a good job, and that's it.
I mean, I've worked with lots of businesses, big ones, small ones, and I can definitely tell you that the smaller companies usually care more about the product being good and fast and everything. Whereas Comcast,
because that's their bottom. That's their bottom line. That's their whole. That's what their whole company is about. They're not worried about buying up the phone line system or
and obviously they want to make money, but they're not to the level of on steroids trying to make money the bigger companies are, and so you'll get less of that shiesty activity of we're the only ones in town, so let's block it and charge them more for it. They tend not to do that. And also, too, the bandwidth thing, people kind of think about bandwidth as this finite resource. You only have enough bandwidth and it's going to run out. And it's well, yeah, but if it runs out, you just build more infrastructure. You can build more, you just build more routers on every single access point and add more fiber lines. I mean, it's a cost, but once you get it up, it's cheap. It doesn't cost much to maintain it. It only costs to put the lines in the first time, and then after that, you can just double or triple or quadruple the bandwidth. And you'll have to charge more after a while, but it's really what I'm saying is that it's not this astronomical cost to increase the bandwidth.
Well, and Doug, you bring up a great point. When you have a conglomerate and you have a big corporation that puts in the infrastructure, they're only worried about profit. They don't care about the service. They don't care how good the quality is. They're just they just put the minimum standard and they just want to make money. Now, when it comes to updating the infrastructure, they don't want to because it's going to cost money. And that's where the government should step in. And I'm not trying to sound like a communist or anything, but that's where the government should they should jump in and they should upgrade. They should be the ones that should upgrade the infrastructure. I'm
a big fan of I'm a big fan of a public option. What I mean by that, I don't mean to use terminology from Obamacare, but I mean I like having a public choice and a private choice. So it's there. The public choice is there if you want it. The private choice is there if you want it. But to say we can only do this public or we can only do it private, it's kind of like having both is good. So, for example, I guarantee you that UPS and FedEx, that their shipping prices would be triple if you didn't have the post office. Some people don't like the post office, but I guarantee you the prices would be triple if you didn't have it. Because it's providing a basic competition on a different model to these other companies. Now, you could do the same thing with internet too, where you could say, no, this ISP is owned by the city, and they do things a certain way. And if you don't like getting your internet through the city, that's fine. You can get it through Comcast instead, and they do things a different way.
Yeah, but Doug, you don't need the city to provide an ISP.
No, you can have a private company doing the ISP part, but you're talking about the base fiber lines that then get
I'm just talking about the infrastructure. Just talking about the infrastructure. Let the government do the infrastructure, and then let the smaller company or any company rent out. So for instance, you got an infrastructure line. 10 companies are vying for it. Let the 10 companies rent it out. Right. And then at the end of the day, that is truly a free market because now you're choosing from 10 possible internet providers.
Oh, I agree.
And they're all going to be the same. The speed's all going to be the same because they're all using the same infrastructure.
Right.
Customer service. But when you have the company actually supply the infrastructure, install it, well, of course they're going to be tyrants about it because they're going to say, well, it's our infrastructure.
Right.
And we're going to charge you whatever and at that point, you're strangled hold because you have no other option. Right. And that's not really a free market. Yeah, and I know you know that. But.
Yeah, no, And when people say free market, sometimes I feel like sometimes it's too broad of a term because I'm in favor of a fair market, and when the market's fair, it'll feel like it's free. I guess that's how I would put it. Because what does it mean? Because I know free market just means back and forth, and anyone is free to contribute and could participate in it instead of certain groups being blocked out and stuff like that. But what happens if one entity does become too powerful? Is it a free market at that point if you decide to break them up because they get too powerful? So all I'm saying is that the market is never 100% free because of we have rules related to it, like what money you have to use and how you have to handle jobs and wages, or how you have to handle so any law you put on it is actually not making it a free quote unquote market. So I'm saying people need to be free. The market is a tool to help us do that, and it has to have fair rules, and then people will be free. And that's kind of how I see it, but I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it.
No, I mean, we had back in the 80s here in Canada, we had Bell Canada, and they owned all the infrastructure, and there was no other phone company that could come in and use the infrastructure because it was their fault of the government.
Right.
And they should have said, no, we're going to supply, we're going to own the infrastructure, or the taxpayers are going to own the infrastructure,
right? And
you're going to rent it. And this way, we're going to allow other companies to rent. This way, we can keep the prices fair.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, listen, the reason why the world is in the mess that it's in is because of the greed of the corporation. We let these companies get too big.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is the fault of politics.
Yeah.
I mean, the infrastructure should belong to the people.
Yeah.
And again, if someone wants to come along and they want to provide a service, then we should allow them. But at the end of the day, the infrastructure should belong to the people.
Yeah, anything that's shared by everyone should be shared ownership, I think, so to speak. And again, I'm fine with the infrastructure being public, and if another company wants to build their own infrastructure too, great. But you can't have only private infrastructure, because then they will 100% control it themselves. And you're at their mercy, and they could do anything they want, really. I mean, some of these companies really have the GDP of countries, so.
That's right.
It's gone a little bit too far, That's all I'm saying, and I think that the problem is that they got so rich and powerful that they were able to buy out the government, and that's why government policies make little sense a lot of the time now, because it's not people-centered policy, it's corporate-centered policy. So everything is how can we get this for the corporations? Well, and everyone will think it's a good thing, And that's what that's what they do. That's what happens now. That's what Obama did. That's what Trump's doing. It's just they try, so for example with Obama, bailed out Wall Street, and then a bunch of Wall Street people worked in the government, and then nobody got punished for any illegal or weird behavior they did. They got zero interest loans to the tune of $1.5 trillion. Instead of letting these banks break up and then liquidating them to smaller banks and letting the smaller banks that survived continue to do so. But they saved them, and they made them even bigger, and they centralized them even more. And we have even fewer banks now, and they're the bigger ones. And so it's kind of it made it worse, but we were told, it was so necessary to save the economy. Net neutrality is going to turn, I think it's going to be the same thing. You're going to get something implemented, and it'll help net neutrality, and then it'll make it less neutral. And that's what I'm most concerned of, is that people, and it's also environmental laws. You call it the Clean Air Act, but it actually increases pollution, So that's that common doublespeak is I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the U.S. it's very common for something to be packaged as one thing, and then it turns out to be something completely different.
Well, it's the same thing here in Canada, but not to that extreme.
Yeah,
but it is a slippery slope here too.
Yeah, I just feel like we're further along the slippery slope. Like we slid down the slope a little further.
Well, I mean, you guys are older. You guys have been around a lot longer than we have. But
Yeah.
you know what? My point is that look, our group. You know, Doug, we've been advocating for direct democracy, and this whole net neutrality thing is another example of failure of representative democracy.
Yeah, I agree.
The two-party system no longer works. It no longer works for people, and to be quite honest to you, it never has worked, and it was never meant to work for people.
Right.
It's a system there for big companies to become even bigger, and basically that's the bottom line. And the only thing that you do democratically is vote.
Right.
And you're just voting. But you're just voting in your next ruler. That's all you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the reason why I support direct democracy myself is because maybe there's even a better system than that. But for now, that looks like the best system to me because the people have real power. Every person has equal power as a citizen, but you can still maintain the governing structure of public institutions and stuff like that, and manage it. But no one person has any more authority over another to make those calls. So we all decide together. So that to me, that's why I haven't resonated as much with anarchism, because I see anarchism as, okay, take away the governing structure and laws, and then everyone kind of has to figure it out on their own and has to come up with their own protection and has to like find small other groups that they identify with to work with, and then if you don't like them, then you'll have a different set of laws somewhere else. And so all I'm saying is I feel like civilization would fall apart under that kind of.
Listen, anarchism is a libertarian's wet dream, and all it is you're just leaving the vacuum wide open, and you're just waiting for it. That's what. Listen, we need structure. We need laws. I'm not saying that we need laws based on what people want. We need some sort of human right. I mean, human rights are essential to any successful or viable democracy. That's what you have to.
Right, and we'd vote for that. People would vote for those rights. They wouldn't vote to take away their own rights.
No, exactly.
The only way that they do that is if they're tricked, and it's easy to trick somebody if you have a smooth talking politician or somebody who's well respected, and then they go and turn around and do totally different actions than what they told you. And that happens all the time. And then we're like, wait a minute, no, that's not what I voted for. But if there was a simple law that said, do you want to implement a new sewer system that's going to clean out all the lead out of the water, and it'll take 5 years to build? Yeah, I do. I do want that. People would vote for that. But if some politician comes up and says, we need to clean up the water system, there's so much lead in the water, and then 5 years later, they're like, I tried really hard, but it just didn't go through like we thought. And then it just doesn't happen. But if the people vote, and here's the thing, I've seen small examples of it in my own life. Like, so for example, every politician I've ever voted for, I regretted it. Like later they did something that's like, oh, I really don't agree with that. Oh, I didn't know they were that shady in that area. But then when it's an actual like thing we're voting on, like, oh, do you want to legalize marijuana in Washington State? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then it passed. People voted for it. It passed. And then a couple weeks later, there's weed shops everywhere. And it's just like, okay, we voted on it. It became the law. And then it just happened. And then guess what happened? But guess what happened when that campaign was going on? They said in Washington State, we want to implement legal recreational weed, but we don't want to take away the medical marijuana system for those who need help with that. And then everyone's like, okay, great. Yeah, we'll vote for that. And everyone voted for that. It got passed. And then what happened? The politicians came in and got rid of all the medical marijuana stuff so that you have to pay the high taxes on if you have medical need for it or whatever. And they just treat medical as recreational now. But it was the politicians who came in after and did that instead of just having two separate systems and leaving it like what would have happened. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is whenever it's like a bill that that Congress is trying to pass, it's also too not a simple bill. It's not like it's a 1 or 2 page bill. It's always like a 1,200 page bill, and then and then you have no idea what the fuck is in it, and you have like people like Nancy Pelosi being like, we have to pass the bill to read what's in it and stuff like that, and that's insane. That's insane. But if people had to vote on stuff like that, they would be voting on each one of the 1,200 pages of the bill separately at separate times. Oh, do you want to implement this small reform? Oh, do you want to implement this small reform? And eventually it would move in a certain direction. But what I'm saying is the people would directly decide that, or at least they'd be able to veto it if they didn't like it. And I think that's the kind of like soft version of it that Switzerland has, right? Where they can veto, and they have also citizens initiative, like citizen like petitions.
Yeah, initiatives and referendums. Yeah. I'm going to end off with this, Doug. There's a gentleman by the name of David Frank down in South Bend, Indiana. He is all about direct democracy, and he's got a system in place. And I just wanted to give him a shout out.
Nice.
His website is called onevoice.org. onevoicenow.org.
Okay.
He's got all the answers for how we can set up a direct democracy, and the modern technology, and even the existing technology that we have now that we can use in order to exercise our democratic vote, any issue that comes up.
I'd like to read more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So his name is David Frank. If any of you guys watch this video later on, you could reach out to him. onevoicenow.org. So
yeah, that sounds good. And again, also too, for anyone on my channel. If you think that direct democracy is a horrible idea and you'd like to debate, and we can have like a live debate or something. So I'm just saying that like I would like to get more people engaged in this, Nick, and like really like, you know, flare it up, because I don't see people really talk about direct democracy that much in general. So like a lot of people are trapped in the paradigm of where it's at now. So it'd be nice to have a long debate about it. And to have a debate with people who hate it too, and see what happens.
No, absolutely. And you know what, Doug? We'll set something up. But it was great doing this, and we're definitely gonna do that thing that you recommended, the questioning thing, for next time.
Okay, sounds good.
It was great doing this, Doug.
Yeah, we'll do it again. And thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Yep, take it easy.